Hello and welcome everybody to a very serious, amazing episode, very special. We are joined today by a man that had a champion mindset, elite physical characteristics, and thrown into the best sporting environments to produce arguably the most unique athlete of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, All Black and Kangaroo legend, doesn't do it justice enough, Brad Thorn.
Too kind, James. Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me here. This is, like I said before, awesome setup. Love what you're doing, mate.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, we're here to talk about your book that is now out and available, Champions Do Extras. How have you found the initial response?
Well, it's only been out from yesterday, but my wife said it's okay. But yeah, we'll see. It took a bit of time to do, and I'd finished 22 years as a player, so 6 years as a head coach of the Reds, so it's 30-odd years there, and it's sort of like, if I'm going to do something, if I got something to say, I thought, well, maybe I got a few things to say from that period of time that might be positive. So if I'm going to do it, I need to do it now. And yeah, year and a half, a couple of years later, here's a book. And that saying, champions do extra, that comes from my father. It's pretty cool, mate. I get to honour my father. He passed away when I was 19, and he was a huge part of me, coming through to be able to achieve the things I did. And, that was his saying. And it was something he used to say, talk about different players. I remember him talking about Ricky Stewart. He'd always kick for half an hour after every training, or he'd always be looking for things to motivate his two sons. I've got a brother, an older brother, 6'8". I'm the little guy in the family. I'm 6'5". So that's where the saying came. And I thought, it was a good title for the book. And hopefully, like I said, it's a positive. It encourages, people. I'm
going to ask a little bit more about the title and the genesis and what that actually looks like. But just firstly, did you enjoy going down memory lane? And you said it took 18 months, 2 years of storytelling with I guess that would be a ghostwriter.
Yeah. Dylan Cleaver did it. Nicola McCloy was the editor. She was great. So yeah, we did a series of interviews, and then he wrote stuff, and then I went back and forth, and it's a solid process, but good to go through. I've got 4 kids. We had 3 under the age of 3 sons, lunatics, and they're now in the early 20s, 19, 20 and 22, and I had a daughter as well who's last year high school. So it's just been flat out. Do you know what I mean? My mother has had Alzheimer's for probably close to 12, 13 years. We sort of looked out. She lived with me. We just had a lot of things I'm basically saying going on. So yeah, it got to that space where at the end of the Reds coaching, where here's an window to have a crack at this. Actually, the book the structure of it is based on, I played for Leinster in Ireland, and we got to win a Heineken Cup, and I played there, had some great times there, and I went to the Highlanders after them in New Zealand, and they reached out to me about what does excellence look like to me. They were trying to relook at their culture. And it was the first time, I'd always thought stuff, done stuff, but the first time I sat down, it was in 2014, and I thought, gee, I need to do this well. And they asked me about excellence.
Yeah.
And I took time to write down what I thought, and I sent it over. They gave it out to their players, and that's sort of, the book is a little bit autobiographical. It goes in the order of me being a kid coming through, but it's also a little bit from that structure throughout. At the end of the book, it's there. There's the list of what I wrote to Leinster, but it's sort of throughout the book. That's like a structure that I use. So stuff like preparation or hard work or caring about your mate who you play for, all that sort of stuff. So stuff that it's like less, like I said, a bit autobiographical, but also hopefully a few lessons that, I learnt and maybe they're helpful. So,
Matt, you had such an amazing career, so many highs, so many changes, so many teammates, so many big games. When you were writing the book and going through the process, did you find it actually quite difficult to fact check your memory? Because I know from my career, things sort of blend into one, and I've actually made the mistake of talking about an event.
Correct.
And somebody's let me know, say that it didn't happen that way. That coach wasn't there at that time.
And you're sure? And you're sure it was?
Like, I put my life on it. Like it's no. This is my memory, and I can imagine for you. Different players in different games. I was having a conversation the other day, and with Luke Keary, and for me, Angus Crichton played for South Sydney in the 2014 Grand Final. He was there with. No, he didn't make his debut till 16. Yeah. Well, fair play.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's basically 30 years. Like I've done it since I was a kid, but like my career is 30 odd years. Now, I pride myself on my memory. I could tell you my under 11s grand final and all this sort of stuff. I pride myself on it. But you're dead right. There's times when it's like I was sure it was a certain lock that I was going against in the World Cup final. I thought the reserve lock had come on and he was opposite me, but it was actually the guy who had started. And that was an example of what you're saying. I would have sworn it was this other guy. I could see his face in my head. And then you fact check by watch, YouTube and went, oh, it's actually the other guy. So, you're sitting there writing out over, and talking around it to Dylan, but then writing and adding my pieces to it. It was just like far out. How cool. It was the main thing that I got to play with and against the guys that I did, have those experiences. And I was pretty fortunate, Mum and Dad, especially my father, was really driven, to dream big. I dreamed big, man. I sat out in the outer suburbs of Brisbane. I was a massive fan of sport. And I dreamed big, but I didn't dream that big. Yeah. And it sort of, it just played out. If I had my way, I would have finished playing league in England, in the north of England, maybe my mid-30s at the latest. Somehow I ended up in, New Zealand, winning a World Cup, as a 36-year-old. And somehow I ended up at 40 playing for Leicester, somehow I ended up coaching the Reds.
Somehow,
you can go on and on. So, it's probably like yourself. Imagine you as a young guy growing up in England, the career you had, and, to be sitting here post-career, in your career, that you're doing exceptionally well. And, isn't it interesting, where life leads?
I was just going to say, so when you obviously going through this process, do you feel like it was just meant to be? Like you said, talking there about dreaming big and all your achievements and playing in a World Cup final at 36. And I've gone through your career and I've done my research and thinking, well, you stop there or you stay there. Or this seems like the path, the natural path. If you were mapping it out, the fairy tale finish, which we're going to touch on later, was supposed to be in 2011.
Yeah.
And do you get a sense that and obviously you're a man of faith, that it was just meant to be, this was the destiny almost, and you didn't even have another choice. You say you came straight from school to play professional sport and you sat there dreaming big, and a lot of people would, when they're young, they have aspirations and dreams, but for you to have that dream and then take the guidance of your father and put it into place is what resulted in this.
Yeah, and the guidance wasn't asking me, it was telling me you need to get, I was a lazy kid and I had talent and he didn't want to see talent wasted. And it got to being encouraging, whatever, but got to 16 and said, enough, sick of driving you around to these, things. And I'd turn up to rep games and I might do 1 or 2 good things, but then I'd back off. I didn't have the work rate, didn't have the belief. As you know, belief is built on the work that's been put in. It doesn't just appear, you know, and I wasn't putting the work in, and kids start to get more serious. So, yeah, it was starting to move past me. And my dad came from state housing. His father was a World War II veteran, alcoholic. I know he battled with anxiety. I'd say that was like a self-medicated thing. It was tough for Dad. So, yeah, they were... You heard of bread and drippings? You heard of that?
Yeah.
It's like the lard.
Basically the juices of the meat. It's the last.
Yeah, like sometimes that would be dinner for Dad, you know, and there was... Yeah, he looked for role models in life, and he was lucky to find one as first boss. He was a watchmaker, firm but fair, you know, and yeah, he was really driven. So, and with Mum, my mum's a country girl, lost her mother at 8 to melanoma. This is in New Zealand. So my mum, yeah, she had a farmer for a father. He's cranky, sort of, but he's an all right guy. But yeah, those two came together. If you think about it, my dad, you know, battling a bit with that necessarily the father figure role. My mum without the mother, they're probably a pretty good fit when you think about it. But Dad was very passionate about getting a bucket and pouring all the stuff that he wished, the support and the good stuff he poured into us. You know, me and my brother to get, you know, it was part of us going to Australia for more opportunities. For, you know, thinking about me and my son, the Kiwis are coming across. They come for opportunity, you know. We started a caravan park and rental into a house or whatever, but he was really driven. And so, yeah, he said to me, you know, you got to run in the state forest that he did. Basically, I sprint hills, and it's like fartlek, you know, where you recover on the run. It's one of the best forms of training. You know?
Yeah. So you go hard to...
Yeah, learn to recover by still working.
Yes.
Never stop or bend over, you know. And something happened in that forest, mate. I went over there and that first time, and I was a lazy kid. My under-14s coach said, "You are the laziest kid I've coached in 15 years," you know. So, you know, I was pretty lazy. That's a big call. I can still remember it. Yeah, that's a fair call, you know. And I was just relied on being, I guess, a bigger kid. Talent, you know, I had talent, you know. So,
relied on size.
Yeah, stock standard. And so, I remember doing that run, and I stopped sort of halfway through it to what I'd eventually be doing many, many times over many, many years. And I remember just standing there going, I just felt awesome. I remember saying, this feels good, out loud. And I turned around and ran back, and this negative side of me thought, oh, you know, you might do it another time, but, you know what you're like. You'll fall away, you know. And it came to a couple of days later, and I used to cycle to school like 9K and 9K back. And I'd be playing touch footy, so it was about 17, 18K. And I'd sit there, I'd be knackered, I'd wait till about 5 in the afternoon, and it was that time to do the run again. And it was like, I'm sitting there going, I'm going to go and do it. So I did it a second time. Once I did that, it just became my way, and it got to a point where I'd come home late. I'd been in the sea with my mate. It was dark. It's a state forest. I don't care. I'm running that run. Couldn't see my footfall, but just a complete mindset shift. And I never didn't make a rep team again. And it fed, you know, I talked about belief, massive belief, and talent got met with work ethic and discipline and refinement, and then boom, you know, all that potential got a chance of expressing itself, and you know, the rest is sort of history. Yeah,
it is the perfect marriage, and there's so many times I think a lot of sports fans look at very talented people and very talented athletes in every sport. Oh God, you just wish that they'd find that moment that you did in your teenage years, or receive that message of the harsh reality of a coach telling you, in 15 years, you're the laziest kid I've ever coached. And sometimes that is what somebody needs to hear, or sometimes it can go the wrong way. We're delicate human beings, some of us, but I find that young athlete development fascinating, and the experiences of your father. Like, so it reminds me of my old man. He got out of his, socioeconomic background through education, but where he's from, they're called jam eaters because they're so, like, bread and jam was, that's what you get. Yeah. And it just drives that. For some people, it drives, and I'm seeing a lot of that in you, that drive directed by your father. But for some people, it goes the other way. Was there ever a thought in your mind where, when the coach tells you that, or your dad's almost putting too much pressure on? Because there is that school of thought out there that you don't pressurize kids, don't put too much pressure on them, but for some, it's needed. Do you think that he recognised in you that you weren't quite at your potential, and you need something to give you a kick up the backside almost?
Yeah, it was definitely easy to read. I think the coach read it with me, but I'm just thankful that I had a father. Fathers over the last 30 years, you watch TV sitcoms. They're the guy they get laughed at, whatever.
Yeah.
No way. Men are so important. Fathers are so important. I'm so grateful for the father I had. And, he had thought about it. I just want to say, I wouldn't want dads out there to think, every dad, if they watch this, I'm just going to force my kid. Yeah. There's some kids who need a hug. Yeah. There's some kids who need encouragement. There's some kids who need to kick up their ass. I was at kick up the ass stage. Do you know what I mean? Dad, he was invested, mum and dad were invested in us kids. They were busy working. Mum was a nurse. When she first came to Australia, 6 nights a week, night duty. We had a coffee shop, whatever, but he was, they were invested in us, and, that was the right timing. And, there was a result achieved out of it. So, you think about your dad, and you think about my dad and stuff, and even back in that era after the war and that, that there's that saying, what is it? Hard times make. Have you heard that saying?
Tough times make tough people.
Good people, yeah. Tough people make good times. So, I see a lot of that, and, I had an awesome upbringing. So, maybe I could have lacked that edge, but, I guess Dad brought that. Something that did help, though, was we were a highly competitive family, highly competitive. Yeah. So Dad was, he could build, his dad was like a builder, bricklayer sort of guy. My dad could build a house. He built part of our house in New Zealand. He could love cars, love the NGBs, could build a car. He's a watchmaker. I don't know if you've ever seen them. It has to be immaculate. It has to be, when you can't have
precise.
Fault.
Yeah. It has to be absolute precision.
So Dad wasn't great at, he liked excellence. He liked doing things really well. So he wasn't great at the, being patient around, hey, learn this, son. We just competed, and you lost until you won. So, when I first beat Dad at tennis, I was 15, and it was ugly. I'm like, I beat you. Do you know what I mean? And we shook it. And
so he was almost like the comedy sketched out of whacking tennis balls against you until
pace, bowling. We played every sport, but add to that, my brother's 6'8", he's 2 years older than me. So you think about a 6'8" kid. He was super tall. So I just got my butt kicked for 15 years. Now, the thing with that is, at school I was winning a lot of stuff because I was a big kid. Yeah. But in my house, I was the little guy, cheeky guy. Yeah. I always thought of myself as a smaller sort of cheeky guy, and I'm the second brother. They're often the guys that, So I'm just for me to compete with my dad and my brother, I had to be at my absolute best. I still get my butt kicked. Squash. They're like, go and sit down, son. So I think that environment is that's a cool. I learned about winning from losing.
Before we get back into the show, I just want to talk about NordVPN because it's something I genuinely use all the time. It is switched on permanently, and that is because my online safety is absolutely paramount to me. I know we all like to use our public Wi-Fi services, and hats off to those providers, but it does come with an element of risk. But NordVPN does help you out and keeps you safe online. We all love to take advantage of that free Wi-Fi, don't we? When we see it in the cafe, the restaurant, the hotel lobby, oh, it's free, I'll get on. But you don't sometimes realize how much danger you are putting yourself in. But all thanks to NordVPN, you can alleviate that danger. It hides your passwords, emails, bank details, which are oh so important. It hides the absolute lot. It also encrypts all your data and hides your IP address so you are invisible when you're online. Of course, NordVPN has the threat protection built in, so all those dodgy websites are blocked before they even get a chance to load. And how good is this? 10 devices covered in the one account. So to get the best discount on your NordVPN, head to nordvpn.com/JamesGraham. You'll get 4 months free when you sign up to the 2-year package, and there is no risk with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Link is in the episode notes. The title Champions Do Extras, I was going to ask where the genesis of it came from. You've explained from your father, and it's almost been a mantra of yours. When you're doing your extras, are you working on strengths or weaknesses?
Sometimes both. Usually it's across just the board, My sons, I got 3 sons and a daughter, and they joke that because I'll do I do a prone like a bridge.
Yeah.
And it's 2 minutes. I'll do 5 seconds longer, and then sometimes I get used to that, so I'll do another second. It could go on going. They just laugh and say, it gets out of control. You could be there for 5 minutes. Because champions do extra. But. Something that I struggle with being a bigger guy, a heavy sort of, in rugby I was playing weight was around the 118 where I feel good, and I'm 6'5". So the problem, which is the hardest thing in league, is getting up and down off the ground when you're a bigger guy. And you know how
it is,
lactic, So, I do Malcolm's because I knew that's what I hated doing, as a big guy, So I forced myself to do what I didn't like doing, and that just brings more mental fortitude as well as fitness. But most of it, so much, as you know, mate, I'm not telling a guy who's done so well, is mindset. I'd work on. I used to love the gym. I'd be in there enjoying, putting extras in there. But anything that my craft was professional footy sport. Every single thing I did, I wanted it to be, I was striving for excellence and how I win it. So when you say, do extra, sometimes you can do extra, but it's bad habits or, it's sloppy. What's the point of doing that? Don't do extra mediocrity. Do extra very well. And then, you get that mindset, and then when pressure comes on, and almost, if that's all that's what you fall back to. Players that don't have that sort of mindset will fall back to bad habits. If you make your habits constantly trying to do stuff exceptionally well, when the pressure comes on, the heat comes on, you fall back. What do you fall back to? Well, I'd like to think you fall back to still pretty good standards. So mindset's so important.
Yeah, your attitude to extras. It's not a box tick. Oh, Thorny wants me to go and do extras, so I'll do it. Oh, yeah, that you can see that. I'm sure your mindset and attitude rubbed off on people, and you brought people with you. That tends to be what happens with champions like yourself. But I can imagine some people maybe I'm just doing it for the sake of doing it, or it's the aesthetics, the optics of, oh, well, player X is with Thorny doing extra, but he's not quite putting in.
Yeah.
And that's the detail that gets the absolute exceptional results like you had.
That's why, for me, I think team sport was great, because I look at a sport where you just on your own and you just have to beat a time or something. And I could just see myself loving that, because I just have to roll myself. But maybe I'd be an asshole. You know what I mean? Whereas with teammates, you need to encourage and work, and just the standards that you set. You know, I will say that because you need a team. Do you know what I mean? Individually and collectively, we're trying to achieve something. We have to. So you get good cultures of groups like the Crusaders or the Storm or the Broncos when I was there, and well, they've done well again. But I would struggle if I saw guys cutting corners and stuff, because I took it personally.
Yeah. Because
I can't do this without you, mate. So if you're gonna cut, you're not gonna recover right. You're gonna do this. At some point, we're gonna have to carry you. You know, I've never been a huge fan of I did this with the Reds, which they probably found interesting. But you know, when you do your fitness thing, and you get the fit guys, they finish and whatever, and then you get the guys at the end, and everyone gets around and keep going, Johnny. There's another way. There's another approach to that. That is walk off, because we can't carry you. We need you. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you're not in that space,
I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I'm not going to stand around and, oh, Johnny, well done, mate. You know what I mean? I know that sometimes there's the team stuff where you get around in that. But we need, every man here needs to, you're going up against the Springboks, every man here needs to hold their own. You know, we're looking to come over the top of the opposite guy. So when it gets to the big stakes and you get, you get a grand final, you get the Broncos and the Storm last year, often it comes down to defence, because it did open up a little bit, but, you can't carry, so everyone has to carry their own weight, and we all have a role to play. You got your guy finisher and that, but you got your guy just toils, gets, quick play of the balls, whatever, or your guy comes off and brings energy. But every man, everyone in that group needs to bring their best, and then you get strength individually and collectively. But yeah, like I said, for me, I just knew as you get more and more experience. Once again, I'm talking to a guy who knows all about it. That's going to hurt you at some point. You keep cutting corners and whatever. Sometimes actions are number one, and then words are respected. They have meaning, So you become a senior guy, I had guys like Glenn Lazarus, who's, one of the best players I ever saw, Alan Lang, all these different guys. Alan was a character or whatever, but he's a competitor. Yeah. He's a competitor. Don't ever, So those, having those, hopefully role modelling, good habits and whatever. Sometimes, a younger player needs an arm around the shoulder, come on, mate, let's do it together. Sometimes a kick up the arse. But yeah, you get them together, you get those, you get a group of guys putting in, not caring about necessarily themselves as the main focus, but the team first. You get to achieve some stuff. It's pretty cool.
Well, it would be, similar to the message that you received as a teenager. You're the laziest player I've ever coached, and that's shook you into action. If you're in a professional team and you're not getting the clap at the end, well done, you're getting the hang on a minute. My teammates have walked off almost in anger, disgust, however you want to personally interpret that. But that's a message, and that message could bring out the best. And so, you know what? I don't want to let this person down. I don't want to let this club down, my teammates down. Like, I'm gonna get my arse into gear.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there are times where you do get around the dudes, but there's, like I said, there's that other ruthlessness of just being straight about it.
Yeah,
like we can't be carrying anyone. So, I love you. You're my brother. Let's go. let's go. If you know what, James, if, you know, mate, I'll stop saying that throughout this chat, but it feels so good to do stuff exceptionally well. It feels so good to look across at Shane Webke on one side of me, Petro Semvasiva on the other. Do you know what I mean? And you know they've paid every price. They have sacrificed. They are in with you. They are not waiting for you. I'm not waiting for them. And that's when you get these amazing bonds that you have in your career, and you get to I guess achieve some things, and it's cool. Yeah, life is short. A career is even shorter. Why embrace mediocrity? Let's have a red hot crack, and let's throw the kitchen sink at it. Let's see and go to some dark places. Guess what? It feels so good when you get the reward for that.
Did you ever get heads of performance or coaches telling you to pull back and stop because you have played in an era where GPS monitors, heart rate monitors, all the data scientists crowbarred their way into professional sport, and perhaps maybe would ask you to dial it down. Yeah,
it supports the program, doesn't rule over it. There's been a battle, I think, over the 20 years.
Yes, there has.
There's the coach has that's part of the craft. When to push the team a bit more. Oh, the running minutes.
All the tie speed, they're going to get it.
Stuff. No, so there's a craft. Wayne Bennett, Graham Henry, Robbie Deans, all these great coaches, the current ones now, Madge, whatever, lo and behold, there's spew buckets at the end of where the guys are doing training. When I turned up to the Broncos in the early 90s, guys would spew before training because they knew how it was you'd have that fight. They'd set each other off and be going, and I was like, that's not my go. But guess what? You're going to dark places.
Yeah.
Guess what? That gets, there's 18 other teams or whatever. And, if you want to be one of those two teams, Wayne always said, the hardest thing is getting to a final. It's not actually winning, it's getting there. You need two things, momentum and a low injury rate, And you want to be in those two teams that are there. There's a bit of sacrifice, there's a bit of, there's a whole heap of teams that want to get there. So who's going to get there? Well, the team that works smart, is committed, who isn't afraid to look each other in the eye and critique. That makes you stronger.
It's not personal.
Yeah. And, by nature, we're competitors. You get a bit of critique, there's always, and then you have a think about it, go, actually, thanks, mate. You just made me better.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't get told to back off in the All Blacks, especially in that 4 years I was there leading up to 2011. When we'd do like initial, when we come together, in the gym testing, we'd do like I think it was a yo-yo test. I don't know if you heard of that or that's But we would always, as a leadership group, try and set an example. We wanted to be the guys that had the best scores. Yeah. So you can say things. The best way is to do them. One of the best ways of impacting it is just showing, and it says so much, So when you got your leaders and they're the top of all those things, and then when we present to the group, at the start of every year is the All Blacks. These are our standards. Me and Kevin Mialama used to work with the young guys who would come in. It gives our words strength. You know what I mean? So one last thing I'll say on that, I was always very protective of the young guys. It's just my nature. I always appreciated the guys who looked out for me. When I first went to the Broncos, Gavin Allen, I don't know if you know some of these names, Alan Can and Peter Ryan, different guys. I think by nature, even with my sons, my daughter, I'm a protective guy, and I wasn't a guy that made it was like the hard head thing on the young guy. I'll come along, but I will give a kick up the arse.
Yeah.
But I prefer to pat on the back and let's go. This is the way. Mate, you're going to achieve great things.
Yeah.
You know, and how cool. Let's do this together.
Yeah. You touched on some of your teammates at the Broncos, some exceptional forwards. You mentioned Webke, Sivanasiva, yourself,
Gordy.
Gordon coming into the.
He was awesome. Kevin Campion, I could go on. Yeah. I hate leaving guys out.
Yeah, it is a long list of exceptional. I'm just specifically talking about the forwards.
Yeah.
How do you stand out?
How do I stand out?
Yeah, how when you with elite, how do you like because I imagine there was some internal competition there.
Oh, massive.
To be the best at the yo-yo, to be the best at the bench press, the squats, whatever it would be like, and iron sharpens iron, and that is driving. But I can imagine you'd want to show to Coach Bennett, I'm stronger, I'm fitter, I'm the one, I'm the man.
If you think about it, James, my father was my first competitor, and my brother. Do you know what I mean? So it's just play on. Shane Webke, if I think about teammates, it's one of my biggest opponents.
Yeah.
We were in the same club, but, you know, he'd do all sorts of cheeky things like, you know, I was a bit stronger on the bench. He was, you know, powerful legs. He's a good squatter. He used to say, oh, look at your skinny pins, Thorny, you know. And I used to squat okay, you know, but I didn't like it. But but I'd be doing my bench, and I'd be like 5 kilo or 10 kilo or heavier than his. I'd see his. And he'd go behind me, and he wouldn't take the weight off. He'd do my weight. He used to peeve me off. He's a competitor. You know, so then sometimes with weights, I'd just sit around for ages. I'd outlast him, force him to go first. So he hasn't seen my paper. He does his weight, then I put my weight on. Isn't it classic? Like, I look at like Tony Carroll.
It's almost childish, but
it's hilarious. It is hilarious. And you're right about it, and you love it.
It's what we
this is what makes us.
You know what? It makes being part of a team that's like, Thorny, you go first. No. I'm going to outlast you.
Yeah.
All right.
But nothing was said. Like, Webby be standing around, grabbing his paper, looking at me. I just sit there, go to the toilet, whatever. He goes in there, right, I put on my weight, you're behind me. But Tony Carroll, like, we were, both of us, because I'm long and reasonably strong, I've been wrestling my dad since I was a little kid. So I was a good wrestler. And my sons, we call it Thorn Jitsu. It's not actually great technique. We just seem to know how to wrestle.
Find a way.
Yeah, you like that Thorn Jitsu? So, but Tony Carroll was a powerhouse. Tunza. He was just such power. And I think Wayne Bennett said in 40 years of footy, he's the most consistent, powerful hitter he'd sort of seen. And he was very good at wrestling as well. And I remember going up against him whenever we wrestled. It was like brutal, you know. One time I had him pinned. I talk about it in the book, and I was just thinking, "You're mine, Tunza." You know, and he just somehow just through freakish power just threw me almost onto my own back, you know. So that whole like Wayne loved competitive games. We're just at each other, and sometimes you come with training field, and I'm sure you have this, you know, you're cranky at other guys because, you know, people don't, you know, just see, oh, the Broncos are training, they're playing this team. But, yeah, like massive amount of it is my adversaries are with my own teammates, you know what I mean, in a good way. And like you said, iron sharpens iron, and, you know, it's pretty cool.
Did you hold a couple of records there at the Broncos in the gym?
Carl Webb was a stronger guy, you know.
Yeah.
He's, you know, but yeah, I was reasonably. I like as a 180 bencher, right? But
180.
Yeah, but
For a guy with long arms, that is.
I was happy with that.
180. Let me think how many plates is that. So you got 20 on the bar, so they're down to 160. So it's 80 kilos a side,
it's
which is 420 game plates.
Yeah. So
that.
Yeah. So
and
I only did it once.
Your reach is.
I take it off, touch my chest, put it back on. So it's like an old school, But there's always guys that lift more and all that sort of stuff. But I love lifting, and I love the gym, and I think, do you know what, James? I think one of the biggest things throughout the 21, 22 years is not getting injured, and when you're winning a lot of those collisions, my most sorest time in my career was when I was a 19-year-old playing, and I was 103 kilo. I was a strong kid, but I was lean, and I was running into the teeth of it. And man, I guess I was boozing pretty hard too, so that doesn't help. But I remember just being sore. But I remember, like, in the mid, me and Shane would talk after a game, and we just played a full-on NRL game, and we'd both feel like we played a game of touch footy, a squash or something. Just because you're winning a lot of the collisions, and you're in that armor, and you get from the gym, and that power protects you.
Yeah.
And that was that helped. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you now. You're coming through. You're making a name for yourself, and you mentioned earlier growing up in New Zealand, moved over to Australia at the age of 8 or 9, very young, and I imagine that helped shaped you as well, moving countries and new environment.
Big move, big move.
But you were faced with a decision: New Zealand or Australia, from a very, very young age. How difficult was that? Because, well, I guess you weren't even facing. It was more the decision of New Zealand or Queensland and Australia.
Yeah.
Because if you chose New Zealand, it meant no state of origin. Did that play a factor in the decision making?
It was sort of hard because they did a 40-man New Zealand team, rang me up as a 20-year-old. I'd only played 7 games of first grade the year previous, but we did well in I think it was Panasonic Cup or something. It was like a pre-season tournament. We won it. I played some okay footy, but they picked me in a 40-man squad, and I was just sitting there as a 20-year-old, and a journalist said, "Oh, how do you feel about being picked in the squad?" I knew nothing about it, and I was just like, what? I didn't know. So we moved over full-time when I was 9 years old, made my first Queensland team as a 12-year-old playing Australian rules football. Went to a national carnival. I was a ruckman. That's where I actually know how to kick, believe it or not. And then from the age of 16, I made state for Queensland. For in under 19s, I played for Australia for under 19s. So, like my identity.
But just quickly, at that stage at playing 19s for Australia, was there a decision to play for New Zealand, or it was just you had to play for Australia?
That's what Queensland's representation for Australia, and I was proud to play for Australia.
But there's no choice. There's no dilemma there for you.
There was no sort of talking about it, or someone said this is an option or something. But I grew up in Australia. I came to Australia, all I knew was rugby. That's what we do. We're born and bred in New Zealand. That's what we're known for around the world. We play rugby. I was a country kid. I played under 6s, under 8s with my older brother because we lived in a country area. I came to Australia. I didn't even know league. And I went to a state school, and I grew up there and started playing league. So, I'd been playing Queensland 16s, 17s, and then 19s, and then represent Australia. All my heroes when I first watched saw Mal Meninga and Gene Miles, and And then as I sort of moved into, I was a centre, had a little bit of speed, and you know how you have your bigger centre sort of thing. So I used to, Gene Miles, I don't know if you remember him or not, but he used to do basketball pass. I used to try and do that. And then as I got a bit older, I was getting bigger, you know, filling out. You know, my heroes were like Ciro and Mark Guy. I used to have Mark Guy's shoulder pads and stinking hot in Brisbane. You know, we used to wear shoulder pads, James, back in those times. And who else? Paul Harrigan and all this sort of stuff. So meanwhile, this New Zealand side of me, it's rugby.
Yeah. Okay.
Sort of like, so when my dad had just died, just before this, so he just died on the 8th of January, 1995. I got picked in this team a month later or something. And there was never an opportunity to go to rugby if you played professional league, because one game was professional, one was amateur. There was word that the game of rugby could go professional. And my dad and I had a chat around it. He said, if you get some stuff done in league, you know, maybe you could head back if the game went pro and have a crack, you know. It was something I went, yeah, I hear, you know. If I get some stuff done, you know, that could be something. So league was for me like Australia, and I loved it. I wasn't a kid at school that was like, oh, back in New Zealand it's way better, blah, blah. I didn't like that. If you feel that way, then go. I was raised, my mates were in Australia, you know. My wife is Australian, my 3 sons, my dad's buried here, you know. My home is Brisbane. That's home. I'm from New Zealand. I love New Zealand. You probably understand because you're being British.
100%.
I'm probably not talking to a guy.
Yeah,
so
100% get that way.
Yeah, I had a mate who was a great mate, who's an Italian guy, and he loved the Soccer World Cups. He loves supporting Italy. Mad Bulldog supporter. Loves Australia. It's sort of, and you're seeing a lot of changing these days, aren't you? You're seeing Tongans play for Australia, or Petro play for Fiji, all this sort of stuff. Back then, and it was a bit touchy. But yeah, I sort of made a decision that, since the age of 12, I've been representing Queensland, represented Australia. I was proud to do that. It was an honour to play for Australia. This is where I learnt league. This is where I've grown up since I was 9. And then when that game of rugby went professional in 1996 with Super Rugby, you know, that's when I looked across and went, you know, Dad had passed away. And like I said, I thought if I get some stuff, and we got some stuff done. We got some stuff done. Maybe if we didn't win finals maybe I'd just stay in league. But I didn't want to be an old man going, there's a couple of questions. If I'd grown up in New Zealand, would I have done likewise? Would I have made it through to the top there and been an All Black? Or another question was, you know, what if I went back and had a crack, would I be able to make it? Could I do it? I didn't want to be an old man, you know. I'm 50 now. I used to, in my head, I'd be thinking 67-year-old guy going, could I have? Would I have?
What if?
Yeah, I wanted to know.
Yeah,
and I considered, and this is, you know, Sammy Burgess had a crack. It was tough because he was a year out from a World Cup, or Sonny Bill, different guys are having a crack or whatever. Good on them. They had a crack. They backed themselves. They, you know, you put your name out there. You know, it's a tough road. You know, you're in the frying pan. You're up for a challenge. You know, you've got a profile. You're going to have a crack. But yeah, I just felt the moment I went, just fast forwarding to, when I went to rugby, I felt that I'd won. I was a winner because at least if it didn't work out, at least I'd know, hey, I had a crack. I'm not an old man going, what if, whatever. It didn't, for some reason, didn't work out, whatever, it came back.
I love that attitude. Go and be prepared, okay with it failing.
Yeah.
There's so much uncertainty, so much unknown going into back to rugby after however many years out of the game, and having this almost identity of not just a leaguey or rugby league player, but also an Aussie.
Yeah.
Like this big part of your identity. And I think back to my decision to come to Australia. It was like, well,
huge one.
I had to go and find out.
Yeah.
And if I fail and I go back with me tail between my legs and it didn't work out, I'll face the embarrassment, but at least I have had a dig.
Yeah.
At least I gave it a crack. And
James, think about it, mate. You're at St Helens,
yeah,
right?
That's right, yeah.
You would have gone from big contract to big contract. How old when you came out?
25, I think.
25, exactly the same age I was as well. And, you had you could be a 10-year, 15-year great there. You're still considered great there, but you said, hey, I'm going to have a crack. And life, like I said, is short. A career is short. And for me, the All Blacks, it's sort of like, it was personal. That was, losing my dad, he was like my best mate. He was, like I said, so proud of him as a father. And he did his job. I was about to turn 20. My brother was about to turn 22. Job done. My dad's name is Lindsay. Job done, Lindsay. It's time for us to take it forward now. Like, obviously, I would have loved him to be around, meet my wife, my kids, whatever. But job done. You poured in goodness. And it's time for me and my brother to look after mum and to as men in our own right, take on life, I guess. And so, going back there, in my blood, I'm born in New Zealand. My blood almost demanded it,
Yeah. There's no thought of
this is
wallabies.
this is what we do. This is like a real corny way of thinking it. Like it's the Spartans. They were just the kids. They were trained, to be warriors. I'm not saying over top on that, but I'm just saying in New Zealand for 120 years, that's what we do. That's what we're known for. And there's a big call there. And when I went pro, do you know the coolest thing, mate? Because I think I've seen you interview Wayne a few times. You know him pretty well. When we won 3 titles in 4 years. It was 97, 98. 99 we made final, just squeezed in, but we had a down year, and then 2000. And so we had this pretty strong team. Wendell Saylor, Lottie Carey, Lockyer at the back, Tony Carroll. We had that forward pack, all this. We had a team that could, continue to go. And I thought when I signed a 3-year contract. I was 22, and for 23, 24, 25. If I'm going to go, I'm going in my prime. I'm not going at the end of my career. I see some guys, John Kerwin came across, and they have a touch of it. If I go, I basically sacrificed my prime years, really, 26 to 29. To try and learn a new game. But so I got to the midway through that season, and I got on really well with the CEO, and he, Shane Edwards, and I wasn't really talking because my mind said I'm going to go back. I'd sussed out if New Zealand Rugby were interested, and they said there would be interest. My manager was sort of doing things. And Wayne pulled me up. We were down playing in Sydney and said, hey, Thorny, what's going on, mate? Because my CEO was saying, trying to raise the money. By saying I'm going to do this. I hadn't really said anything. I had said nothing, but I was holding off. He said, I've only got so much money, whatever. Wayne goes, what are you doing, Thorny? And I said, mate, I want to go back. I'm going back. And, I'm going after it. And you got to love this about Wayne. He's like, go get it. You know what I mean? He knew me for 7 years. He knew when I was in New Zealand, I used to buy the Rugby League Week, to keep an eye on league. When I was in Australia, we'd travel down and buy Rugby News, so to see what's going on in there. So I've been doing my homework, but Wayne was, from my head coach, he could have gone, what are you doing? That's so, no, go get it, boy.
Yeah.
Go after it.
How good's that message?
How good, mate. like I said, 3 from 4-year titles. So that's probably one thing to say about that. I didn't say that 2 or 3 years in where the program and they'd poured all the stuff into me and I'd given nothing back. I'd played about 140 odd games. We'd won titles. I played 7 years there, which for some people that can be almost like a bit of a career, So I'd paid dues.
Yeah.
I'd returned. He knew I'd honestly returned. I like to think I gave a return for what they invested in me. And he was like, it was actually him that I was going to go back to Otago, where my father was a Otago schoolboy. He was actually a fullback, goal-kicking fullback. He didn't like being on the bottom of rucks. It's funny. Me and my brother just love that stuff. So, but all my relations are there. And I'd met with the coach there. And but Wayne had a relationship with a guy called Steve Hansen, who was at the Crusaders. They'd come to check out the Broncos or whatever. And he said, look, the Crusaders are in town in a couple of weeks. I could arrange a meeting for you. This is from my head coach.
That really should be doing everything he can to convince you to stay, and how this is the wrong call, and mate, we're building something here. This is the the dynasty.
I was about to sign my biggest contract. Instead, I went for 130 New Zealand. I went from 400 down to, do you know what I mean? I was in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I ended up going to Christchurch. I didn't know anyone there, had no relations. But I knew they had. I met with them when they came over. They impressed me, Robbie and Shag, Steve Hansen and the people there. I'd seen what they'd done with players. A guy called Ron Cribb had come down from the Blues and thrived there. Norm Berryman was another guy who'd come there. They developed players well. So instead of going to where I come from and where the support was, I went where I knew was the best. It was still in the South Island, and if I could make it amongst them, the best way to learn is off the best, And I went there, and man, she's a hard road. And the biggest thing is you're going over there, you have a profile, people know you for, we've been successful with the Broncos, and, you got 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds who know more than you do about the game, and all your errors and all your faults are played on live, international TV, Super Rugby. It wasn't like I got to hide down at a club somewhere. And it tested me, mate, and my most important years of my life.
I'm thinking about some players that change codes, and they the league background, maybe a lack of acceptance. Did you feel immediately accepted, or you're coming from this excellence, this you've been professional for a lot longer than the rugby union scene? Were they looking for you for guidance? How was the reception? Did you have to feel like you had to prove yourself all over again, and the trust and the respect?
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
do you felt like it came?
It did over time. But the hardest thing as a pro was I took pride in my performance, and I'd be there for my mate. When Wayne was in the stands, I wanted him to, if there was 13 players out there, he only has to worry about 12. I'm going to bring more than what he's asked, you know what I mean? So then I'm in rugby, and I'm looking across at you, James, and as a Crusader, you're looking at me, and I've seen the look in the eyes, which is, I don't trust you. You're actually hurting us. And man, that as a competitor, as a guy who prides himself on, giving it your all, it's hard. It hurts.
Yeah,
but I did. You know what, James? I didn't have it. I was hurting the team.
Yeah.
I was put at number 8. It's one of the most skilled positions in the game, the connection with the 9 in rugby. I had to learn this game that was the forward play in rugby union is like the decathlon at the Olympics. It's all these crazy different events. Everything's contested. The line out, what the heck, I got to know. Or I had to carry all this information in my head. It wasn't natural. It needed to become instinctive. And the way to become instinctive, you need time in the saddle. You got to, I was 2 seconds behind every play, in bad shape. My mindset was, try not to embarrass myself. Do you reckon that's, if you ran out next to a guy, is try not to embarrass yourself? Is that the mindset you want next to you? You know, so it's not the place to learn, but how good. That's where I did learn, and you know, and that it was humbling for me. It brought me closer with my relationship with God, because often we do things in our own strength, and you know, it. Like I said, the humblingness of that, and just having to persevere and hang in there. You know, the culture was so different. I got on the bus, and I just sit wherever in the Broncos. I sit in the middle. New guys down the front, or young rookies in the front. So I played a season in Brisbane, first grade at 18 as West, plus 7 years, so 8 years. And now I've come to the Crusaders 2001. So this is my 9th year as a pro, right? Won big games, been part of things. I got to sit down the very front seat of the bus. That's their way.
Yeah.
And I'm coming to them. They're not coming to me. I need to respect them and their way. And so, I went down and sat there, and we got on a plane. And the Crusader way was they wait for the entire, we'd be on a jumbo jet coming across Australia. The whole plane gets off, then they come off. It's pretty cool, eh?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Guess I was sort of near the front of all the players. I went off with everyone else. How do you think I felt standing there where the bags are coming around and the entire team, you know? They had things.
I guess if you didn't know, then.
Didn't know. I didn't know.
Still, the feeling would be,
yeah, making all these errors, making these mistakes, being late because I didn't know Christchurch wasn't my town. And so many of the guys put effort in to make me feel welcome, and that was, really appreciative. And, probably a key thing with, imagine if you talk to Sam, you probably talked to him around it, and Sonny Bill and different guys that probably have similar stories, but it being a challenge, I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to them, but a key thing happened for me was I came back to Australia after the first Super Rugby season. I had 3 things when I went to rugby that I wanted to know. Do I like do I like rugby? Am I any good at it? And do I like living in New Zealand? And the answer was no to all 3. And I'd have mates saying, "Hey, Thorny, hasn't worked out. No one cares if you come back." Or I had my uncle, who was a guy I really looked up to, said to me, maybe you sit league more. That hurt. That's my uncle, but he's right. But I came home, and my brother, Dad's been gone for 5 years or so. And Big Aaron says to me, if you're going to be over there, you're going to be away from your girlfriend, who's my wife for 23 years now. You're getting paid less. You're battling away, missing your mates, all that stuff. That it is what it is. But go back and give it give it everything you got. So there's a Super Rugby, then they have an NPC. So they play in New Zealand. So it's sort of like not quite as level as Super Rugby. It's still a good level. Go back, and for all that it is, give your best, and then you can walk away. Like I said, as an old man or whatever. I wasn't up to it. I wasn't, or it didn't work out or whatever. But don't walk away not having, giving your best. And,
go all in.
Yeah. Sometimes I became the guy where I was getting to training last and leaving first because I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't feeling, see how that had changed. And so, I went back. It was a good uppercut. A good encouragement. And I went back and I did what he said. I threw the kitchen sink at it. And then something special happened. Finally, I started to get instinctive. I put extras in. I started to understand their way, their culture, and then probably the first thing that was the connection was the scrum. In scrums in the league, we sort of just breath out. We work. It's like a bit of a breath, and then we work. In union, it's like imagine having your max squat just set up. Say there's 20 of them around the field. And we've got you running around. Okay, do your max squat and hold it for about 10 seconds. You know what I mean? Now drop it. Now run over there. You know what I mean? It's a different type of fitness, rugby. It's a different style. But they moved me from number 8. They put me at lock. And almost all the energy and all the frustration, I just took it out on the scrum. So, the scrum is like, basically, you get in good shape and we want power that way. And I'm like, okay, you're getting it in spades. This is what I can do. I'm going to freaking, put my shoulder. I'm going to, I want to hurt these guys up front because we'd hit them at scrum machine. And, I felt like it was like a release of all this stuff, all these line-out calls, all this stuff. Boom. And the front rowers just went, love me.
Yeah.
And because that's valued in that game. And finally I had something, and self-esteem, there was something there, and I could look across James and, the front row, the leaders, the guys who pay the tough dues would look across, and there was respect, there was connection, and which I live for. I said when I was a kid, I love camaraderie. I love rough and tumble camaraderie. Camaraderie is the number one. When you look across at me, I want you to look at me, and I want to see trust in your eyes. And I'm going to bring that there. So finally I had something, and then other things built from that, and I finally started to take to the game, and there were things that I could bring, and I could express who I was, what I bring, that's always the challenge, when you go across. And by the end of the year, it was like, do I like rugby? Yeah, it's okay. It's great. I love my league, but it's great on me. Am I any good at it? I'm getting better.
Yeah.
And do I like living in New Zealand? I'm starting to get a feel for it, so yeah.
What year were you selected for the All Blacks? Were you elected to sit that one out, didn't you? Which is, from the outside looking in.
That was a 1+ 2-year contract I had. So I was determined no matter what happens, I'm sent out that year.
Mm-hmm.
My brother made sure I wasn't sent it out sulking. I was in not sulking, but, I was in the right mindset. Then I had an option of 2 more. I was unsure about my future, like I just told you.
Yeah.
How did I see rugby?
Yeah.
So...
but you pulled out of the All Blacks tour, right?
If I had gone on that tour, here's 2 options. So before it, I said I want to go back and think about things. I'd shown potential, and players get picked on potential. The World Cup was 2003. This is 2001.
Yeah. New Zealand rugby are going.
Yeah, we've
got something
going on here.
Bit of a diamond in the rough.
Yeah.
We've get that polish out, and we'll.
Yeah, I was coming off the bench. I was like an impact player. I was calling myself a professional bodybuilder because, you come on for 20, 30, it was like, I was used to playing league games, starting, and I was getting paid just to lift. I felt awesome during the week, but I'd come on and make impact. And I sort of said, I put out that sort of message. They still picked me, and, probably that made it a bit awkward because I either go and say I decide I'm not going to do rugby after that. That would have gone down like a lead balloon. Do you know what I mean? This guy's come from league, taking a jersey, he's out of here.
Yeah.
Or I'd make the call and do it before. So I made the call. I made the hard call, which was, not easy, at that time. I took a year away from all sport. I think, was I talking about that before?
I read up on that, actually. Yeah. So a year away from all sport.
So you think about that. That's going into year 10 now. 7 years, 8 years. And then, so it's year 10. I played for, you think about it, I played for 21, 22, 21 years pretty much. It's like a half-time break in a career. When you look back on it.
You weren't thinking that at the time.
I'm not planning that. No, I'm not planning that. But if you think about it, if I think about things, I went off alcohol for 6 years from the age of 26 through to 31. There's different things that I did that, like I said, being a professional around my strength and conditioning, I think helped me. You look at the things things don't just happen by luck, some things, but like not over that long period of time. I just think that was healthy. I married my wife. I got my house in order as a Christian, as a man, around different things. Getting rid of alcohol was one of those things. I met people who weren't involved in footy in that year. And it seemed so important, and some people didn't even read the back page of the sport, and it was healthy for me, to be around other people doing other things. I travelled over to Europe with my wife. I, did camping trips up the coast all the way up to the Daintree, did all these things, and then it got to a space of it's time to. I'm ready to go back. And with the legal union thing, it was like I was getting to a place where there was some reward there. I want to go and cash in that reward. So that's why I went back to the Crusaders, and that year made the All Blacks again. I needed every game in that super game to build my game. I'd become a lock forward. And then got to go to a World Cup, and it was sort of like a massive goal achieved. Yeah.
And then after that, back to the Broncos.
Yeah, that became because number one in 2004, new coaches came in. We lost the World Cup, and our job is not to lose. Our job's to win. That either you need to understand that when you put that jersey on, it's a it can crush guys or guys thrive. For me personally, I felt like Superman in that jersey. I felt
in the
like,
All Blacks jersey.
You asked me before, you felt like I was born to play in that jersey. It was like something, like I said, something deep inside me, But so the new coaching staff came in and they left me out. Initially, later on, they were wanting me to come back in, but I'd already talked to Wayne. My mind was I'd achieved the goal, I'd done the task. Dad, me had talked about representing my country. I gave jerseys out to my relations because we'd never had like a grand All Black in our family or anything. It meant a lot to me. I wanted to share that sort of reward, and I want to come back and play with my old mates and see if I can win a title again and whatever, So, and then I thought, I'll probably go to England and close out playing a couple of years of league there. So, went back. We're lucky to win a final in 2006. I got to play Origin again, and 10 years at the Broncos club meant a lot to me. Yeah.
And then you come over and play a World Cup Challenge in England against
you kicked my ass.
Some ginger kid. What a game that was. Hey, I just want to flip back really quickly to sort of the beginning years at the Broncos. The Super League war. Everyone has a Super League war story. How did you, as a young up and coming forward, with all that potential, how did you handle that? Was the crazy money thrown at you? Are you one of these players that were came into the building and there was a blank check given to you almost?
Yeah.
Can you recall that period of your life?
Yeah. Well, I was on like $5,200 when I.
5,200
when I first went into the Broncos, and $100 a week it was, and
it is. I was thinking out the good maths.
So it was up from $75 a week the year before. So I almost went to the Bulldogs, to be fair, with Steve Price. And then my dad actually rang the Broncos. And believe it or not, I had other clubs talking to me, but I hadn't heard from the Broncos. And a guy called Bullfrog Moore, I don't know if you heard of him.
Yep, of
And I thought I was going there. And I liked the Bulldogs. They played tough footy. And I thought I would suit down there. And my dad actually rang the Broncos and must have got the main front, where the pokies and that are. My son can play, and they're like, "Oh, we'll put you up to recruitment or something. I got a kid who can play, and okay, we'll get this guy." And then my dad, I'm at school. My son, I got a son who can play, and the guy's like, "Yeah, man, okay, sure." How many dads probably do this? And he said, "What's his name, mate? Come on, Brad Thorn." He said, "Oh yeah, we do know about him. So bring him in." Wayne signed me up for half of what the Bulldogs are going to pay me. But if you think about that, my dad passed away 2 years later. That was so important that I was there and got those valuable time with him. But anyway, Super League comes along. That first year, I went up to $40,000 from 5'2". I was like, wow, me and John Driscoll, we both got Rookie of the Year together, good mates. And then Super League comes along. Oh, my goodness. They're talking about all this money, and it's then ARL and Super League, and the Broncos were Super League, so I just went with them.
Yeah,
that was just how it was. It wasn't. We went to John Rebo's house. Was one of them. He's the main driver, and the sort of big dogs had signed, but they had the rest of us there, and we're just at his house, and you go into a room and guys would come out with smiles on their faces. And my name's Thorn, so I was like one of the last guys in.
Oh, so it was alphabetical.
Must have been, yeah. I remember I was like the second last guy because I think Kerry Waddles was after me. He's W, so... Anyway, I go in there and like 20 years old or something, there's a check. I'm on 40. I've been on 5,200. I've gone to 40 grand, which is crazy. It's equal to what the people on my street and the outer suburbs are on, And now I see a check for $25,000 on the table just for signing on. And then it's 150 for 2 years, 150,000, This is back in the 90s, 1996 or something. And, but my dad... I think I said he was a watchmaker. He actually ended up in real estate. And it amazes me, like, things I remember from Wayne. Amazes me things I remember from my dad. But Dad used to have, like, different real estate sayings, like, never take the first offer and, the customer's always right and all this sort of stuff. I've got my dad's thought in my head. And my dad's just passed away. But John Rebo, it was a real close club, the Broncos. We knew everyone and we got on well, and in my head I'm going, never take the first offer, 25 grand, And I just say, look, my dad always said to think about things. How much? Because there was a lawyer in John Reba. I'm thinking, how am I going to get out of this room without signing it? Yeah. I'm 20-year-old, and they're going, come on, sign it. And I said, look, I knew he wouldn't be able to go. I thought my dad would be proud of me, even though he'd passed on, good on your son, negotiate. But I said, my dad always said to think things over, and I knew he wouldn't push that because, Dad had passed. So I got out of the room and I went home and I said to Mum, I just had a check in front of me for 25 grand and this much money. My mum's a nurse working around. You know what you're doing? So, yeah. And anyway, the next day I turned up to Broncos training and I'm running out on the field, and Wayne was up next to me. Who knows what he's thinking, but he goes, Barney, heard you didn't sign the contract yesterday. And I said, yeah, I just want to think about things. And he said, there's another 25 grand there for you. So... young kid, I made 25K in a day. This is like 1996. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. There were guys that were like on me and the Brad Clydes and Ricky Stewarts and all these big Alan Langers. But for me, just a outer suburbs kid new to it. That was really cool, and it was interesting.
What a crazy time. Honestly, I can remember the Super League, which still is in England, and seeing the Aussie teams come over when you had that sort of World Club Challenge. That was
awesome,
pretty
mate.
prominent. And,
we loved it.
But the game, you could argue, still maybe hasn't fully healed those wounds from the Super League ARL war, and it is a fascinating story. Every player around your era and a little bit older, they've all got their Super League stories, and some of them, like $1 million a year is a big deal now. 96, 97.
Oh,
like that is
crazy. I paid off, bought my house, my first house as a 22-year-old, and I bought it for $190,000, and the housing market been flat in Queensland for about during the 90s, and I think I paid it off in like a year or something, or 10 months or a year and a half or something ridiculous, because I didn't really have much to spend things on. I love, saving, paying debt. So it was crazy. It was really interesting, and probably the things I didn't like about it, I didn't like that big S on every jersey. I love the Broncos jersey.
Yeah.
I finally get to wear it, and it's sort of become, everyone's got this S, and it's a different style. And the other thing was the crowds sort of, there was all these games going on. ARL had all their games on. Super League had its games on, and sometimes the crowds weren't. When I first came in, like we'd play like the Gold Coast, and there's like 50,000 at ANZ Stadium. South Sydney, you might have played them. They weren't going very well near the bottom. You have like 40 to 50,000 on a Friday night. It's sort of like it was I felt like it sucked a bit because there's a bit of fraction. There was fraction in the game, and those crowds probably weren't quite what they've been. So it's sort of like felt like, oh, this is my time, because the big crowds are awesome.
Yeah,
you love it. So yeah,
absolutely. 97, you picked for the Super League Kangaroos team, and actually got to say big shout out Jason Stevens, who was very influential in organising this podcast. A good friend of mine, someone I know from around the traps in Cronulla, and I can see why you two gravitated towards one another, but it was on this tour where God and Christianity really dialed up in your life. Am I correct in that?
Yep. I think, have I said that we went to church in New Zealand?
Yeah, so you were telling us off air that you were a church-going family in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I'll let you take over.
That was cool. I remember I used to say prayers down the end of my bed with my mum, before I go to sleep, and good fond memories. And Dad was with the youth group, and it was I get to go along because Dad was involved, and but we came to Australia, and there was we went along to a church. We didn't feel comfortable there. We just stopped going. So we didn't. That all of a sudden just changed for like 7-8 years until Mum and Dad finally went back. When I was about 15, they had a neighbour ask them, and my brother ended up getting along as well. He had a friend at school, so then there was me. I was just doing things my own way, and I'd gone back to New Zealand as a 13-year-old for my granddad's funeral, and they'd asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a professional footballer. And I had big dreams, be famous, nice car, house.
Can I just add, at that age, was professional football, had the game gone pro at that stage?
Not rugby,
but league had,
yeah.
So it was quite
league had been professional for a long time. It was like semi-professional, whatever. But my relations sort of laughed because they didn't know what I was talking about, But yeah, 17 I signed with the Broncos, like I said. 19 I was playing first grade, 21 Origin, 22 for Australia. Had that money coming in, and ego was soaring. I was living the life, I was train hard, play hard, party hard, and I just had all the stuff that I would have dreamed of as a young fella, and I just felt an emptiness. And the more stuff I had, I just wanted more stuff. It's like constant. There was no satisfaction. There wasn't like a peace. So I'm at the top of the mountain at 22. We won a grand final, played for Australia, all this stuff, and there was an emptiness, and the lifestyle I was living, not in a depression type of way, there's a sadness. And it got to a space where I just didn't really feel much at all. And I'm just confused. I'm sitting there going, I've got all this stuff. Why am I not happy? The more stuff I have, the more I want. And so I started thinking about God more. And it sounds silly, but when I was a kid, just the joy I had in my heart, just remember, that I just felt I'd fallen a fair way. And, I was boozing and womanizing and carrying on. And so I made that tour. Jason Stevens was there, and I knew he was a Christian. And I like Christians. I'd go along to church. I was the guy at the back who left first, and, But, I just said to him, look, mate, I like Christians. They're nice people. One day when I'm a nice person, I'll be a Christian. But right now, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm a bit of a loose cannon. When I change, then I'll be a Christian. He said, it's Jesus changes you. You need Jesus. Jesus changes you. And that was, that had an impact, He said, I knew the story of Christ, died on the cross for our sins, he had resurrected, on the Sunday, and brought hope. Sin was dealt with, relationship with God was made right again, and that there's more than than this life. More, there's hope for what's to come, and that was interesting to me. So I said, thanks, mate. Good chat. Respected him. I saw he had a peace in his life. I could see that. People at church and that when I went along, I could see that, there's something there. I didn't have that. And,
you wanted that?
I knew that was missing. And I didn't really have an answer. I was just living. But I was thinking. And like I said, the mass equation didn't add up. I should be happy. I've got all this stuff. And then
everything you dreamed of.
Yeah.
Everything you've dreamed of.
Yeah.
Everything you sacrificed for. Everything you did those runs for.
Yeah.
All the extras.
Yeah.
And it felt like you said empty.
Yeah. So and the life I was living, had a car with my name on it. I go to a club. I'm at the front of the line. I'm boozing, going hard. I'm doing all the stuff that goes with that. And there was, like I said, there was almost a sadness, around it. And like I said, from those memories and from the people, I'd be around, at church or whatever, I just saw, there's something that Jason has. I don't have that piece that he has. So, I basically went back after that tour to Australia. We had an off-season, and I just got even looser, I lived in my own house. I was, going hard, and it got to one day, my housemates were away at work, and I just thought, I'm going, it sounds weird, but I'm going down here, and I thought, I'm not changing. I want to change. I'm not changing. I'm going to give what Jason said a crack. So, I said a prayer in my house where I got down on my knees. And I said, look, Jesus, if you're there, I don't know if you're there or not, but if you're there, I'm sorry for the things that I've done. I've done some pretty rough things, poor things. I've done some things not so bad, but please forgive me for the sins I've done. And so like my mind, here's the keys. I've been driving and it sucks.
Mm.
You know, here's the keys. Please come into my life and turn this life around. I surrender my life to you. Please come in and turn this life around. So yeah, I said that prayer and got on with my life. Nothing special happened or anything, but I noticed after that there was definitely a difference in here. For a couple months, it was almost like a battle. Almost got angry because I was still had the habits of the boozing and the womanizing and all this sort of stuff, but there was something different where it was like there was like a clash almost, you know, and then you know, I got to a space where I felt real peace, and you know, it was you know, I started to read the Bible. I thought I've asked Jesus into my life. I better re-look over him. I knew all the Bible, you know, Jonah and the whale and all this sort of stuff, but I read those 4 Gospels, basically 4 different people talk around Jesus. They'd be like 4 mates that all have something different about you. And I couldn't put the Bible down. In the past, I'd always battled to read the Bible. It was really like on fire. Like I'd be reading, and it was everything that I loved in footy. You know, loving your brother. You know, everything that makes a good footy team. You know, humility. You know, work ethic, discipline. You know, having courage, all these sort of things. Sacrifice, you know, that's when you sacrifice things to achieve things. And I, you know, I thought Christianity was for old ladies and, you know, and Christ, you know, going to the cross, said nothing, just took it. And you saw 12 disciples who fled under the pressure of that. 3 days later, they spread the gospel, and every one of them, bar one, were killed for their faith, you know. So, yeah, there was probably the easiest way to say the change in me was before that time I was just all about me, what I could get out of things, you know. If I was honest, you know, people were way down here and God was not thought about at all. That sort of swapped, where I started to really think about what the Lord wanted in my life and how, you know, and relying on His strength and honouring Him through I do things. I started to care a heck of a lot more about people, not just what I could get out of them or whatever, or looking after number one, but how they were doing, you know, interest in them, whatever, and then myself. I'm not saying I didn't still have an ego. I still had journey battles. You know, to this day, I'm chipping away. But that's how things played out, and I'm grateful they did. There's been, I think, close to 28 years or something since that time. You know, and every day, yeah, I try and you know, like I said, walk in the Lord's strength. And I feel I have purpose. I have purpose, and I know I have fulfillment, and I have a peace, and yeah, that's sort of where it sits.
You feel it? It clearly plays a significant role in how you feel, and you know, not feeling empty, as you say. You think without it, you would have been able to go on to have the career that you had, or with the way you were going, it was going to be destructive, and obviously playing 21 years of top-level league and union, that doesn't happen by accident. No. That is the extreme end of the spectrum of games and years played in all sports, never mind the physical nature of ours and rugby. Like, do you put? And we know we spoke about that maybe God's plan or the destiny, but without that intervention, would you have been able to perform at the level that you did? You feel
end of the day, you can't fully say that's how it played out, but I'd imagine, I gave up alcohol 2-3 years later. I felt like God said, you need to walk away. You know what I mean? Would I have had that thought? Would I have been, knocked my body around, or, I had peace, in life with a woman that I fell in love with and married and had children with? Would I have had that peace, if I hadn't have been in that space? Would have been rougher, I feel like everyone has their purpose, and God's played out my purpose. The Bible says we're special to Him. It actually says we're made in His image, and He has great purpose for us. He loves us. So I feel like, that's each day I'm trying to live my purpose. Would I have been driven or different things? You'd think possibly. What I know is the Christian faith. Jesus laid down His life. He, submitted. Not my will, but yours be done. He went to the cross. It's like servant leadership. The game of rugby and rugby league are service games. You have to do your job. For the winger to score an awesome try, mate, you do that. You pay those dues. You make those meters. You're not doing these awesome chip and chase tries or whatever. But we need you to do that job. We need the 9 to give great ball. We need, the ball player to have good options inside or outside, doing their job. It's a service game. That's why you need humility. That's why you need discipline and all these qualities that we all love, courage and all these sort of things. And all that nature, as I read, like I said, I read about those 4 Gospels, God's nature. That's His nature. And so for me, I felt like, for a guy who grew up competing against my dad and my brother, when I first went to league, I come from that forest run, I just bite and scratch my way to the top. It was good for me. When I went to rugby, I actually had I've been a Christian for 2-3 years, and I knew I needed, in 2003, I had that year off and I came back. I knew I needed to play every game to build a case and to learn the lock, get good at playing lock, to be a chance of making the All Blacks. And as the start of the season, and there was a young guy who was a lock, a 4th lock at the club. And I looked at him after training and he was trying to work on something. And I remember looking at him going, I'm not helping him. Because, I'd come through in league, fought and scratched and bit my way at the top and got there. And there was emptiness. Then it'd be fine. A couple of years, the Broncos doing well, no real tests going on, I stopped alcohol, whatever, but then a test came again where, hang on, I knew how to get the job done, look after number 1, walk straight over the top of that guy, and ruthlessly pursue being an All Black. And I'm not helping that guy. He's my adversary, in the same spot. And then I had this thought in my head, you said you were going to do this God's way, he is a teammate, he's in your spot, but, you could work with him and maybe, he can improve whatever. That was a challenging moment for me. I stood there like no one would know this for about 2 minutes looking at him. It annoyed me because I'm like, no, I know what gets this job done. And it's ruthless and look after, And so then I go over and I go, right, I'll do it your way, And I went over and I worked with, as in to God, I'm going to do it where I care, but generally care about my guy, even though he's in my position and whatever. And I went over and worked with him, and there was joy. I felt a joy in doing that. And that set off from there on, where I almost I went from being like a slave to almost looking after me, number one, all the time, my interest first, almost reverse slave to where I worked with guys and loved it. And from the guy that was empty and, you know, in his house wondering, I got all the stuff, why am I not happy? To being a guy down the track going, just the enjoyment and the connection and I guess it's the word is love, care, whatever. Where I probably got known for being a guy that you know worked with guys and helped young guys out and whatever, and you know what, I still got the result. So I got success, not as a Christian, ruthlessly doing it. I got success as a Christian, where I started to care about people, you know, what God wanted me, what He put me here for, and the others. But with that success, I got true success, where I felt
the feeling,
joy. It's awesome. I would. It was crazy for me then. Not saying it's now, but I was getting more joy out of seeing them do well than almost my own achievements. You know. I hadn't in the past. I was being like, I don't want them to do so well. You know, I want to do this. So, it was interesting.
Obviously, very conscious of time. I know you've got some places to be. The 2011 World Cup. You've made you've made a decision, made the call to come back to rugby union. The All Blacks haven't won a World Cup since the inaugural competition.
24-year drought.
It's back on home soil. You mentioned about putting on that jersey and some of the expectations.
Yeah.
No bigger.
Yeah.
No bigger than that World Cup.
No.
Favourites going into the comp?
Yeah. Yeah. Best in the world for the last couple of years there, 2-10, 2-11, and went into the World Cup final raging favourites. You know, the French were written off, and
you'd already beaten them
in the round robin. Pretty comfortably, and we were the most senior All Black team. You know, we've got a lot of great names there: the McCaws, the Carter, Marnonu, all these sort of guys. And the other thing, James, is my last game. It was game number. It was my 59th test, but I'd played a game. It was my 60th game. The last time I'd wear the black jersey
for the All Blacks.
Yeah, and we're at a home World Cup. The last time we'd had that was in '87. No one really knew it was the first World Cup, you know, and it really came to life. But everything was on the line, mate. It was, to me, all the grand finals. I played 4 for the Broncos, 4 for the Crusaders. You know, I was going to go on to Leinster after, but at that point, I felt like those grand finals almost prepared me, you know, this is like the final one, you know.
Final frontier.
Yeah, and everything was on the line. And, you know, there was a lot of pressure around it. I don't like admitting it, but I actually had heart palpitations for those 3 weeks in the quarter, the semi, and the final. I didn't actually like going to bed at night because I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, but it's like a fluttery chest. I'd feel it, you know. During the day, you don't notice. But that's how much pressure, you know, there was on it. And that's the only reason I was there. Like the year earlier, I'd got my 50th test cap. I could have gone. I was there to win that title.
Yeah, that's what.
No question about it. We're there to win it, and it was so much respect, you know, for the French. They did what the French do. They stepped up, and forever in this life, I'll always tip my hat to them. You know, they lost 2 games in the round robin, and the game was 1-8-7. The importance of the score was, I think, looking back, really good, because over the years the All Blacks would play this great brand of rugby and we'd win, and then we'd come to World Cups and we'd fallen short. A team would stay with us, and then pressure would come on, and sometimes you got to win ugly. Just win. That's all that matters. Doesn't matter if it's 50 points. Doesn't matter if it's 1 point. 5, 6 or whatever. And it got down to just this tough stalemate of a game, and we played out that last 20, 30 minutes. And you know what it's all about, mate. I don't need to tell you, but it's just that bond, that brotherhood of doing your job again and again and again. Don't ever stop. Everything you got, no backward step. And who wants it more? Who wants it more?
What price are you willing to pay?
Yeah, what price? Any little shortcut one of you's made, it could have been months ago. You didn't do ice bath. You didn't do something. What's going to show? You see those boxers. I love, the fighters, the boxers. Man, they go out on their own, and they bring everything to it, and you can't have any weakness, as that group. The pressure, the whole crowd. The thing with New Zealand, they were with us. There was a connection.
You felt connected to the people you were playing for.
More than I had any other time. The crowd felt yuck in that final. It wasn't enjoyable. It was a fight. It was a fight, and who's gonna keep their nerve and stay in the fight? In the past, we had. I don't want to be harsh and say go on a water or anything, but we hadn't come out the right side of that. We hadn't handled that.
You had plenty of excuses as well. Was it 2 or 3?
Down to our fourth number 10.
Fourth number 10.
Yeah, the 10 that came on, Stephen Donald, great man. You'd love him.
Because
he was white baiting. He wasn't even doing stuff, and he got brought in. We lost Dan Carter, Colin Slade, Aaron Cruden They just dropped a fourth number 10, who's a champion of a man. His name will go down forever. They made a little movie about it in New Zealand.
I read about that. Yeah, how cool is that?
A year before that, this guy is a wonderful guy. The main magazine said, "Is this the weakest link?" Had his face on it, and it sucked. I remember looking at that and just thinking, "You punks doing that," And he comes on. I remember looking across at him in second half, and he's got. He'd just come into the team, and the jersey was too tight. And I remember looking across, going, "Oh no," because we lost Aaron had been playing really well, and his nickname's Beaver. We got on really well, and I was thinking, you haven't been doing much rugby. I'm like, oh, and the crowd, he was pumped. He couldn't wait to get on. His jersey was too tight and bouncing around, and I was just going, hang on. And the crowd was the same. You could hear the crowd sort of just seeing him, and you could hear, a bit of uplift. And Beaver come on, and by the time he ran on, just looking at his energy, I was pumped. I gave him a big ass slap. Yeah, he kicked, the winning goal. Just went. Does not matter.
Yeah, just
does not matter.
Yeah, just goes over, right?
And he played a heck of a game, and we got the job done, and I fell to my knees. I've seen guys like Mel Meninga and that. He cried after. You see what it means to these guys. You've seen different guys. I think Sam Burgess was in tears after the South Sydney. I'd never really done that, and I fell to my knees and bawled, walked away from the team. Just the release of pressure. Because for me, it was 3 grand finals, quarterfinal, semi-final. You can't afford to have when we win the quarterfinal, we're going to do this in the semi. Guess what? You're going home. It is like 3 grand finals, the World Cup. It's different to the other years of rugby. The round robin didn't interest me. Nothing's on the line. It's about building. But I've been on edge for 3 weeks. Like I said, even to the point where I was feeling palpitations. And because of a bit of baggage in 2007, they'd fallen short in the quarterfinal. I wasn't part of that. I was doing league. I almost felt like I had to have just so confidence and strength around the team. So in a way, I was always a little bit acting. Not, I felt a confidence in that, but I just knew I needed to be solid, and just confidence and and that all came out bald like a baby. And the coolest thing, the physio came up. I was embarrassed. He came up to me. I said I was going to push him away. He said, "Lindsay would be proud of you."
That's cool, man.
Makes me emotional. Yeah,
so I'm getting emotional right here.
It was cool because when someone goes, when they pass away, you don't hear their name very much because years go by. You don't. It's cool. You see some old guy and your dad. You hear your dad's name come up. He said that at a time that was pretty cool. So no more soppy stuff, but yeah.
Mate,
so that was cool and job done. Duty. It felt like a duty, James. It'd be like if you went back to England and I don't know if there was something that there was something that you went back and that kid didn't just leave and kids leave your classroom and what happened to that kid? He did some stuff. He come back and I'd like to think we added to the jersey and for 120 years they've been doing the business and then you hand it on to the next guy and away it goes.
In terms of the book, there's the fairy tale ending.
Yeah.
That's it. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we all lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
And Brad Thorn sails off into the sunset and puts his feet up and relaxes. Look.
It's not how I roll.
Yeah. Well, again, this champion mindset, doing the extras.
Well,
is that I need to do some extras? Why carry on? Why not just go, thank you?
Because I have a fire that burns in me. And even to this day, and I'm a competitor and I love challenge. And I got to a stage at 36 where I'm like, I still feel good. And by knowing that you feel good is like your numbers in the gym or like when the week of the World Cup final, I like my gym. Like I benched 5 kilo less than I did in 2000 as a 25-year-old the week of the final. So I'm running well. I feel good. I'm going to keep playing. But now I'm going to have some fun. I had 10 years at the Broncos, 7 years at the Crusaders, and everything was always on the line. Everything means so important. And 17 years meant so much to me. The Broncos meant so much to me. Crusaders, All Blacks. Now I want to have some fun. So Japan, Ireland, England. Finally went back to where I actually came from. Finally to Otago, and played for the Highlanders, and actually. Finally played for where I actually came from and played for my club team as a 38-year-old. I go around Australia. We're not from here. I don't really have a place to go. Dad didn't play for this team. The club team I went back to in Otago had my uncles, my cousin, my brother, my dad on the. You have like teams. They weren't. I'm not saying they were great. They were good footy players, but, and now I get brought into the, I felt like, I know it sounds ridiculous, it's a club team. I know, and it could have been any club team, but I came into the family. Do you know what I mean? Because rugby means so much to New Zealanders.
I do know what you mean.
I was in tears. I probably sound like I'm being emotional now, and I tell you about crying after the World Cup, but I got my jersey presented by my uncle who talked about my dad and just said some nice words about me. And I'm sitting with these club players, 30, won World Cups and all this sort of stuff, and tears running down my face, because I joined the family. So yeah, so yeah, that was all cool, and then we finally came home. I finished at Leicester. Just had a crack. Enjoyed. Loved Leicester. They love a physical game. Leicester. That's how you say Leicester over there. Working class, right up my alley, and then my oldest son was going to be the age to go to high school, and the last battle was to compete at 40, not to play at 40, but to play well at 40, not just to exist. I wanted to dominate, and I felt I got to do that, and then it was time to give our kids stability, Aussie, New Zealand, big blue sky upbringing. Be able to have long-term friends.
What are you trying to say about England? It's not blue skies there, mate. Come on. I had to. Yeah, it's paradise.
I got used to that darkness. Yeah, but yeah. So
what would they not like about it going dark at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? I mean, what's not to like?
Exactly.
You get an early night.
Exactly.
Easy, right?
Yeah, I loved it there, mate. I loved it at Leicester. I loved my time at Dublin, at Leinster. Got to win a Heineken Cup, play with some great players. I love my time in Japan. Going up there and playing rugby and knowing only 50 or 60 years earlier, people were dying over that or fighting to the death over that in that World War II. And you're playing up there and you're playing with these Japanese guys, can't speak English, whatever. But they become your brothers, and even though it's Japanese rugby and we were a good team, all that same connection is there, and it's so cool.
An experience that sport can give you, like it did when you go back to your, the club that your fathers and your uncles played for. It's that. I always say this about sport. It's made up game with made up rules. Yeah. And, this club is technically made up, and I've got the same connections to clubs back home, but it does so much for communities, families.
You're dead right.
It gives society so much, like so much that our sport, rugby, whatever it may be, it gives society a lot.
It does such a service for society because, like I said, it's working with others, and, some kids are the stars, some kids need encouragement, whatever. It's a selfless game, both those games. Any team sport, you have to work for each other. It brings out the best. The fabric of man, to me, is love, and an easier word to love is just care. That might be more relaxed.
Just care about
your mate, care about your team, care about the cause you're trying to achieve, and it's just so good, team sport. Like I said, if I'd been a single sport guy, maybe I'd achieve, but probably would have been. I probably would have been an arsehole.
Or not the same level of, certainly not the same level of connection.
Yeah,
feeling.
Yeah. Achieving something together and having a joy in that, it's awesome.
Absolutely. We'll skip past all the coaching stuff. Yeah. Next chapters, because the book's not finished.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So what
solid.
for considering what you've done, and I guess you've been in that bubble for so long of professional sports environment, and we've just talked about how great it is, and what's next? And obviously looking at you still physically very fit.
Yeah.
What is on the horizon? Obviously there's a New Zealand coaching gig available.
It's not me. But the last couple of years I've coached. If I was to coach professionally at that level, I finished with the Reds. I need to leave the state. It's not like you're at the Roosters and you can coach Manly or South or So that's not a reality for our family. Like we brought them. I've got a daughter. 3 sons are out of school doing their thing. So proud of them. We're a tight family. My daughter's in the final year of high school. So after this year, if I wanted to look professionally, overseas or something or whatever, there's an opportunity around that. But, we'll see. I've really enjoyed. I've coached First 15 at a school called BBC, and I've really enjoyed it. Just taking a breath, but just, what the kids bring, they're in a great space. 12 years of learning, they pick things up pretty quick. They don't really have any bad habits, and I said before, I've always been protective and around the younger guys and teams and that, and just having an impact. The game is a vehicle that for character development. That's what it is.
I like that.
Sorry, mate.
Oh, that's all right, mate. I love that.
That's what it is. So through the game, you get to impact on young men and things that maybe, a lot of them, maybe it's not going to be a footy career or something, but all those qualities we talked about before, you learn through the game, and it's special.
It sure is. To wrap things up, mate, I'd just like to ask, favourite teammate from league and union? And obviously, mate, I reckon there'd probably be almost thousands. There'd be in the thousands.
So many, yeah. I'll say Big Pet. Big Petro. You know him very well.
I know him from being around the traps. What a gentleman.
Yeah.
What a gentleman.
Yeah, just the equivalent to him is Kevin Mialamo in New Zealand. They're sort of like this gentlest, softest, natured men, and they're absolute concrete. Petro's left shoulder, I used to do, I'd carry the bag from doing his hits, and nasty. You got guys like Shane Webke and other guys. But in rugby, far out, so many guys as well. It's a tough one. The whole front row brigade, I was pretty tight with all those lads. They were my type of guys. So maybe, could I leave it somewhere around that?
We can.
Is that okay?
I'll take that as a final answer. And I just want to say, to wrap this up, thank you for sharing your story. It's one that I think our listeners can take some valuable lessons from, and what an incredible story. You should be incredibly proud of what you did, and the young boy that came over from New Zealand that made a home here in Australia. Yeah, it's beyond unique. It really is. Thank you and congratulations.
Awesome, James. Thanks, mate. You're too kind, and it's been awesome being on your show, and massive respect for what you did in your game and what you've done since. So really cool, mate.
Thank you kindly. And again, final shout out. Thank you, Jason Stevens.
Yeah, big Jace.